Hi, in this episode of Civilized Eatin, we're going to do something just a little bit different. Instead of using our microwave like we normally do, we're going to go old school. And I mean really old school. We're going to recreate a recipe from the 1800s called chicken pudding.
You're making what?
Let's see how it goes. Hi, my name is Terry Sancha and I'm the head moose at Purple Moose Designs. And today we're going to be making chicken pudding. I got the recipe out of this really old book. My mom had this book as long as I can remember, my preteen times. But it's a reprint of a book from 1879 and it's called Housekeeping in Old Virginia. And there's all kinds of recipes in here, as well as how to get stains out of your clothes and all kinds of other stuff too. And there was one recipe in here that kind of caught my eye, so I thought we'd give it a whirl today. Never made this before, so we'll see how it comes out. Now, the recipes in here, recipes from this time period, aren't really descriptive on their instructions, so there's a lot of room for interpretation, so we'll see how it goes. Now, there's a whole section in here of recipes for chicken pudding. And just to be clear, this isn't the kind of pudding that we think of nowadays. Pudding back in the 1800s would be more like a casserole or something along those lines. So I decided to use this one. I will read the entire recipe to you. It says, cut up a young chicken as if to fry and parboil it. Boil and mash Irish potatoes. Beat up 3 or 4 eggs. Add to the potatoes and thin with milk. Season with butter, pepper, and salt. Stir in the chicken and bake it. Boiled rice is a good substitution for potatoes. And this was submitted by Mrs. E.W. That's the entire recipe. There's no measuring. There's no how long do you bake it? What do you bake it at? None of that stuff. So we're going to have to kind of guess at all that stuff. So what I did was I didn't have a whole fryer, so I had 4 chicken thighs. So I've cooked those, boiled them with some salt and pepper, and chopped them up. They're just slightly underdone because they're going to bake with the potatoes. I also have my potatoes. Now I didn't have Irish potatoes. Irish potatoes are usually white. Didn't have those. I didn't have them at the store, so we did yellow potatoes, but hopefully that won't be a big difference. So, let's see. We'll drain these off. And we're just going to mash these up like we're making mashed potatoes. So I have, these were the potatoes that I used. They're smallish. I used 7 of these. So we have 7 potatoes, smaller potatoes, and 4 chicken thighs. I'm just gonna mash these up. Now, again, in the old days, they wouldn't have had an electric mixer, so we do this by hand, which is how I do it anyway. Oh, forgot the milk. Craig, can you get the milk for me, please? The new one. All right. So we will add a little bit of salt. And freshly ground pepper, which I just did. Thank you. Don't know quite how much butter to add, but again, if I was making mashed potatoes, I would probably put in, that's probably about 2.5 tablespoons of butter. Now when I make mashed potatoes regularly, they can get quite stiff And I found if you put the salt, pepper, and butter in first before you add any dairy products and get that all mixed together well, then it doesn't get as stiff. So I think that's probably good. So we have a big bowl here. Just add the potatoes in there. Oh, not yet. Beat up the eggs first. So it said 3 to 4 eggs, but it doesn't tell you how many potatoes or how much chicken, except that it's a whole chicken. But chickens back in the 1800s were much smaller than what we have nowadays. They also were a little bit more gamey than what we have nowadays. So that's why I chose chicken thighs, because they have a little bit more flavor in them. So we're gonna go ahead with 4 eggs. Beat those up. This is one of my favorite little whisks. It's like a whisk inside a whisk. It does a great job. All right, now we can put the potatoes in. Alrighty. The recipe also didn't say what to do with the chicken, whether you leave the pieces whole, cut up, diced, shredded. So I just went with a chunky dice. Alright, there's that. We'll add in our chicken. Now again, this is slightly undercooked because it's gonna cook in the casserole. All we need is some milk. Which I, of course, can't open. Don't know how much milk. We'll find out. It also didn't say, do you want a small pan and make it thick? Do you want a big pan and make it thin? So I'm gonna go with just a square pan. I think that'll be best. Maybe just a little bit more, we'll see. Going to assume that we don't need to grease the pan first. So some of the other varieties of chicken pudding that were in this book didn't use potatoes, and they used a whole lot of eggs, like 14 eggs. So then it, to me, would be a little more pudding-like, which doesn't sound appealing to my modern palate. All right, I think we're good there. Put that in the pan. And then it'll be time to bake it. Now it didn't say what temperature to bake it at or for how long. So I'm going to assume that this is kind of like a shepherd's pie or a cottage pie, which I would bake at 400 degrees. So we're gonna go with that. And when we're all done here, I'll let you know how long it took. Wish me luck. Okay, so it's been about 45 minutes. I did check it at about a half hour, and the outsides were starting to firm up. The middle was still a little bit gelled, so it's been about 45 minutes. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, it's nicely browned on the top and it is firmed up like pudding. So let's try a little bit. Probably should let it sit for a minute, but can't do that. I do smell the eggs. Ooh, it's hot. So it's got a texture like, kind of like loose mashed potatoes. Okay, it's gonna be hot. So again, this was 45 minutes and if you have any old recipes you'd like to have us give a try, please leave them in the comments. I'd love to try some other new old ones. Interesting. Kind of plain, kind of bland. I think if I was to try this again, I would zhuzh it up a little bit, maybe put some vegetables in there or something, but then it'd be a little bit more like shepherd's pie or cottage pie, but with chicken. But interesting. So there we have it, chicken pudding from 1879, recreated in today. All right, I couldn't stand it. I had to remake our chicken pudding and bring it into our current century and see if we can't improve a little bit. So I think from the original version, we had the ratio of the chicken, the potato, and the eggs correct. I think we had the baking temperature correct, and I think we had the time correct. It was just a little bland as far as flavor. And we wanted to cook a little bit healthier, so we wanted to bring in some veggie too. So let's try it again. So I have my 4 eggs. I have my potatoes all cooked. I have my chicken thighs cooked. I think thighs is the correct thing to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and mash my potatoes up. And we're gonna be adding some spinach, baby spinach chopped up. It's not cooked or anything, it's raw. It'll get cooked in the oven with the rest of everything. And we're gonna be adding some grated onion and grated garlic. So I didn't want to chop the onion. I thought grated would be better. Please excuse my bloodshot eyes, but grating onions is a cry fest. Okay, so our potatoes are all good. And the original recipe called for Irish potatoes, which are white potatoes. So normally when I make mashed potatoes, I do use white potatoes or russet because they disintegrate more and make a smoother mashed potato, which I think would do this well, but they didn't have any at the store, so okay. So we will whisk up our eggs here. That looks good. And then we're gonna add some salt and pepper. I do think I didn't have enough salt in the first one. There's not much left in here. Now potatoes can take a fair amount of salt, so I'm gonna add a little bit more this time. We're gonna add just a little bit of pepper. And we're gonna add some onion powder and garlic powder. To me, those are staples. I just can't really cook without them. So there's one. I did have a friend come over in the meantime, and she tried the first one, and she thought hot sauce would be a good addition. All right, so we're gonna add a fair amount of butter here. All right, let's give that a little whirl here. And then we'll add our potatoes in. See if we can get that butter to melt with our hot potatoes. There we go. And we'll get that all mixed up. And we'll add in some milk. Kind of like just making mashed potatoes. You put a little bit in, see how it goes. Put a little bit in, see how it goes. I don't measure. I don't really measure with most cooking, actually. Okay, butter's not melting, so that'll help to melt in the oven. All right. And then we have, I grated up 1 onion. I grated 5 cloves of garlic, and we have a healthy fistful of fresh spinach chopped up. And the spinach may look like a lot, but once it cooks, it'll be nothing. And it'll add a little color as well as some nutrition. So we'll mix that in well. Then we'll add our chicken. I don't want to really add too much milk because once the spinach starts cooking, there's a big chunk of onion, we don't want that. Once the spinach starts cooking, it will add some liquid, so I want to make it a little bit thick. So that looks good. So I don't have another square pan, so we're going to use this pie plate. Hopefully it fits. And as I'm sure you just heard, the oven is ready at 400 degrees. And I did like, when I did the first one, I did want to make some peaks because the peak kind of got browned. So I liked that. So there we go. We'll stick it in the oven and then we'll have a taste test. Okay, it's been about 45 minutes and the second one is done. We did have a little bit of spillage in the oven. It's a good thing we don't have smell-o-vision right now. So I think the pan was a little bit smaller, but that's okay. It looks good. It's nice and browned on the top. Everything looks good, so let's give it a taste, see how it comes out. Get a little chicken in there. It smells good. It's very hot. Hot. Pretty good. I do think that grating the onion was the right call. Then you don't get chunks of onion, but you get the onion flavor. The garlic flavor is coming through. I can still taste the eggs. It's got a nice creamy consistency. Not pudding per se, but everything's held together well. So this is the original 1879 version. This is one brought into our current century. So I hope you give it a try. And if you try either one of them, leave a comment and let me know what you think. Thanks for joining us today. Be sure and hit like and subscribe so you can see future videos when they come out. And we'll see you in the next video.